はい、竜王の大体山頂です。こんな感じですよ。めちゃめちゃハードですよ。厳しいですね、今日は。
Tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I told you. I'm going to do that in my talk too. So I will begin and end with a story, a vignette to try and drive the point home of what I'm trying to get across to you this afternoon. In the middle, I'll give you the guts of what's in the book. The book is actually designed to be read by regular people. It is only 100 pages, with 20 pages of citations. And if you think that's easy, think again. The editor kept making it shorter, make it shorter. And that was my challenge, is to get this point across in a form that people would actually read. You know, we as academics are rewarded for writing big tomes that to drop them on a table, they pass what we call the front test. They make a really loud sound. This book doesn't do that. This book is actually meant to be consumed. So, and that matter is also priced very reasonably. It makes it self-sufficient for business to be said. Let's begin with a story to try and set up what I'm going to talk about today. And it's a story that happened to me, and it happened to me here at the University of Michigan 5 years ago. I was called by the development office. They said we have a potential donor worth a lot of money, and he's interested in business sustainability, what I studied. And when I meet with him, to possibly get him to give a gift. The only time I had free was at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I met him over at the business school in one of the conference rooms. I showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning, cradling my cup of coffee, still trying to wake up. I entered the room, and there's a conference table. The potential donor sitting across from me, the development office to my right. I sit down, and the potential donor starts the conversation by saying, I think the scientific review process is corrupt. His exact words. And that kind of woke me up. And I said, well, what do you think of the university based on the system? He says, I think that university is corrupt as well. He went on to say that he thought climate change was a hoax. We started to discuss solar flares and sunspots, and we kicked that around for a while. And then he started to slice on me, and he said, now why do you hate capitalism, and why do you want to destroy the market by teaching environmental issues in the business school? So we kicked that around for a little while. And then he said, now do you know why Earth Day is on the day it's on? And at this point I've become pretty punchy, so I said, why don't you tell me why is Earth Day on the day it's on? He said, because that's Karl Marx's birthday. I turned to the development officer and I said, what's our agenda here this morning? And the potential donor jumped in and said, I want to buy you a ticket to the Heartland Conference, which, if you're not familiar, is the #1 climate skeptics conference in the world. I did a quick calculation of my calendar in my head. I found a conflict. I declined the invitation. The meeting ended, and I was furious. I felt that this person had done a bait and switch. I felt that he was a Satan. I felt he was crazy. And then through the day, as I talked to more and more people, and I thought about it more and more, my anger turned to fascination. Because the more I thought about it, everything he said hung together. Everything he said represented a consistent worldview. It was not a worldview I shared, but it was a worldview nonetheless. And if I could understand that worldview, I could understand where he was coming from, perhaps understand where people who reject the science of climate change come from. And that's when I set about to start to look at this. Because what he had done was come to the University of Michigan, specifically to talk to me, to invite me to the Heartland Conference. He came to evangelize me. And then we start to look at it that way. You start to look at this as a cultural issue. And that's what I studied. And that's when I started to get excited. And that's when I started to do research on this, to start to write about it, develop a string of work, culminating in this book here, that tries to bring everything together that I could find, and I have done, on why do people reject the science of climate change, the sociology and psychology of why people reject the science of climate change. I'm going to give you the punchline right now. And the punchline is this, that in the public debate, and the political debate, for that matter, on climate change in this country right now, the topic is not CO2, it is not climate models, it is conflicting worldviews, and people defending values that they hold dear. And when you see it in that light, the next logical step is, if you try and convince these people with more data, they will dig their heels in even harder and resist what you're saying. And that's important for you as you find yourself across the dinner table at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever holiday gathering you have, and that brother or sister, aunt or uncle, niece or nephew says climate change is a hoax. And what do? What do we do? Well, we whip out our PowerPoint deck and we start to educate them on the science, not realizing that that is actually counterproductive, that that is getting in the way of communicating with this person over what they're actually talking about. There's the punchline. You can now finish your meal, you can check out, you can start checking your email. That's the thrust of the book. Let me go through the details of it, try and convince you that that is true, and then again I'll end on another vignette, and then I'll take questions. Let's start to set this up, and I want to focus on two divergent trends. I'm going to look at this as someone who studies cultures, someone who studies norms and beliefs. And the first trend takes place in the sciences. We have the IPCC coming out with increasingly stern statements about climate change and its impact on our world, and you can see here the 2013-2014 statements that warming of the climate system is unequivocal. It's not the ghost. Here's the beginning of this trend. Next, nearly 200 scientific agencies around the world, including every one of the G8+5 countries, endorse the IPCC statement. Let's go further. If you do surveys with practicing climate scientists, and this is important, practicing climate scientists, not when the Wall Street Journal published a letter signed by 15 scientists saying that the science on climate change wasn't settled, it was signed by a marketing professor from Wharton, the research and development director at ExxonMobil. These are practicing climate scientists, and you can see the numbers up there in red from the mid-80s up into the 90s, say, yeah, folks, this is happening, we are doing it. If you look at the literature, 97.1% of the papers between 1991 and 2011 that look at the issue of climate change endorse the IPCC statement. In fact, the science is so compelling that the National Academies of Sciences and the AAAS both use the word consensus to describe the state of science on climate change. That's trend number one. Trend number two. Belief in the science of climate change declined from 71 to 7% among Americans between 2008 and 2009. Right now it sits around two-thirds. Two-thirds of Americans think that climate change is real. And, even more amazingly, belief that most scientists think global warming is happening declined from 47 down to 39% among Americans between 2008 and 2011. A significant number of Americans don't believe that climate change is real, and a majority of Americans don't think that scientists think it's real. I don't care where you stand on this issue. Sociologically, that's fascinating. What in the world is going on here? How can we understand that? That's sort of the motivating question to get me started on this inquiry. And we could be talking about many different topics. Right now we're living in a very interesting time where science is being challenged. I think the Academy is facing a crisis of relevance in our society today. There's an anti-intellectualism that's spreading. What I'm going to talk about, I could be talking about climate change. I could be talking about autism and vaccines. I could be talking about GMOs, nuclear power, gun control. I can go down the list of issues that have become fodder for the culture wars. And this is a study by the Pew Research Center showing the difference between AAAS scientists and the American public on a whole host of issues. And you can see these gaps where science says something and many people don't agree with it. And there's an issue of science communication that can come from that, but we want to understand why they're not hearing the message. So, I want to start to think about the issue of climate change as a cultural issue. And to do that, I want to identify two variables, two concepts for your consideration. The first is a scientific consensus. The second is a social consensus. And the two very different realities that come about through very different processes involving very different populations. On the left, the scientific consensus is formed by scientists. They use journals and conferences. They use accepted methodologies and peer review to come to a conclusion that this is the state of the science. A social consensus involves a much wider array of characters. Whether you like it or not, in the debate over climate change, in the social arena, radio pundits matter, sports figures matter, movie stars matter, the priest down the street matters, what happens in your town hall matters. Everyone is part of the debate, and not all of them use scientific reasoning to come to their conclusion. This is a very emotional debate, and that is a big part of what's going on here. It takes a while to go from the left to the right, and we've really been only at the climate change debate for about 20 years, beginning around 1997, coming to the present. And so as an analogy, think about the debate over cigarettes and cancer. For decades, scientists said that cigarettes cause cancer. For decades, the American public rejected that belief. In fact, for decades, Americans thought that cigarettes were good for you. And you can see ads. These are ads from the 1950s and 60s. And as you can read it over here on the left, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. In the center, your dentist would recommend you smoke Viceroys. Or over here, scientists and educators prefer to smoke with Kent and micronized filters. Cigarettes are good for you. They're not bad for you. This is crazy. But over time, we have reached a social consensus that cigarettes are bad for you. How do we know that? You know you have a social consensus when people feel safe saying this is true in a public audience to people they don't know. I'm willing to bet that any one of you, if you sat down for lunch with your son or daughter and they took out a pack of cigarettes and lit one up, you'd have a conversation with them over whether that's a really good idea. I'm even willing to bet that if your son or daughter brought a friend who did the exact same thing, a friend you've never met before, and lit up a cigarette, you might actually say the exact same thing. That's how you know you have a social consensus, because it's an accepted way to see the world around us. How do you know we don't have a social consensus on climate change? It's because people don't want to bring it up in polite company. Two-thirds of Americans rarely have ever discussed global warming with family or friends, according to a study by Yale. It has joined sex, politics, and religion as topics you don't believe bring up in polite company. It became, in this last election, as powerful a wedge issue as abortion. That's quite shocking, and quite startling, and quite interesting. How did this come about? Let's begin by breaking out how people stand on the issue. It is actually not a binary split. Climate change is a hoax, climate change is real. People follow along a spectrum on this. And this is a study that's done by Yale University. They do it twice a year. It's called the Six America Study. And they divide people into 6 segments on their belief in climate change. On the left, we have the alarm. They're very concerned. They're very afraid. This is very serious. Something really bad is going to happen. On the right, we have the dismissive. This is a hoax. This is a joke. Why are we paying attention to it? And in the middle, we have the shades of gray of people's positions on this issue. What demographic variables line up with people's position on this chart? Well, on environmental issues in general, the demographic variables are these. It's women more than men, care about the environment. It's urban more than rural. It's the coasts more than the middle. It's affluent more than less so. It's educated more than less so. And it's liberals and Democrats more than conservatives and Republicans. On climate change, all those variables go away, except for political party affiliation. The number one correlate is someone's belief on climate change aligns with their political affiliation, Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. Here's some work that's very interesting by Riley Dunlap and Aaron McCreight. And I direct your attention to the chart on the bottom. One of the top says the same thing, but this is, the blue line is Democrat, the red line is Republican, the time scale is 2001 to 2010, and you can see among Republicans an increasing belief in climate change, among Democrats an increasing belief in climate change over that 10-year period. And in fact, if you were to draw that graph, and then the surveys are there, and keep going to the left, those two lines meet in 1997. Why is 97 important? That's the year the human treaty was signed. That's the year that an issue that was debated primarily in scientific circles now took on a gravity that impacted powerful economic and political interests and got thrown into the public debate in ways that scientists were totally unprepared for. The metaphor many have used is that scientists were like the Boy Scouts going against the Marines. They were totally flat-footed at the blowback that occurred around the issue of climate change. The trend continues, although encouragingly around 2009 it starts to tick back up, and just over 50% of Republicans right now believe that climate change is real. Upwards of 90% of Democrats believe that climate change is real. There, to me, is the smoking gun that this is a cultural issue. Are Democrats and Republicans taught about science in any different way? No. Do they look at it through a particular filter, worldview, or lens that gets them to see something different? Yes. How can we understand that worldview or lens? That is the focus here. Let me break it out in 4 bullet points to make it as painless as possible. So the social psychology of this in the book. And the first is, we all use cognitive filters. We all look at things through a lens. All of us. Interestingly, on whether climate change is real, Republicans are more opposed to science. On whether GMOs are safe to eat, just that discrete question, Democrats are more opposed to science. We all do it. We all have a lens, and it's backed up by a worldview we bring to the table. Because we will readily accept something if it supports our worldview. We will resist or reject it if it challenges our worldview. And climate change challenges, in many ways, many aspects, I'll get into it, a conservative worldview. And we are driven by what's called motivated reasoning. I will approach things. Jonathan Haidt talks about this. When we approach an issue that we don't understand well, and that's important because a lot of people in this room really know climate science. And so their position on this issue is grounded in the science. But those who don't are driven by motivated reasoning. They want to reach a conclusion that confirms their worldview. And that's really important. And we do it in all aspects of our life. I'm driving my car, and I develop a rattle in the front right quarter. What's my first thought? Just go in the wheel. What's my next thought? It must be just loose bolt. What is happening? I am trying to avoid the conclusion that I need to bring the car to a mechanic. I am not approaching it as a scientist. I'm approaching it as a lawyer. I have a very quick emotional reaction. Our emotions will kick in really, really fast. And then our reason comes in a distant second, trying to confirm what our emotions told us in the first place. A lot of us do this. And we need to recognize that we all do it, so that's a play of this debate as well. Where do those filters come from? Well, they come from the groups we associate with. They come from our tribes. They come from the identities that we possess. And so if you hang out with people of a certain worldview, you want to become connected with those people. And over time, you will start to adopt the worldview that they have in order to feel part of the community. I warn students about this often, that they can go into a company, and if the values don't fit yours, you can think yourself the supreme individual. You are not. Over time, that organization will have its way. I have a brother. I love him dearly. I watched him move from Michigan to Texas. I watched his politics start to swing to the right. Who do you see as a trusted news source? Very provocative question right now. I can offer 2 names. One may make your stomach twitch, one may not. I can do it to any audience because it will be either way. Fox News, National Public Radio. Surveys show increasing listenership of Fox News, decreasing belief in climate change. Increasing listenership of NPR, increasing belief in climate change. Who's the spokesperson you trust? I'll do it to you again. Rush Limbaugh, Al Gore. These people are representative of a tribe, of a worldview that you may possess, and therefore you will trust what they say. Our social media is doing it to us. We create filter bubbles around ourselves. I guarantee that those you follow on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn have worldviews that are similar to yours. And they reinforce your worldview, and that is a major issue in our politics today. There's a really nice study done by someone at the University of Indiana a couple of years ago. They got their hands on 500,000 tweets. I got to put this image in the slide deck. It's a startling image. They got 500,000 tweets before the midterm elections. They ran an algorithm to code them liberal or conservative, and then they looked at who retweets who. And 2 very clear clusters form. One is a liberal conversation, one is a conservative conversation with very few ties in between them. It's a visual representation of the filter bubbles we create through what's called cultural cognition, connecting with those around us. Over time, once a position fits with our cultural identity, then scientific reasoning starts to move to the side. Because it becomes challenging to start to analyze something that requires effort to think outside the belief systems I have. I could ask this room, how many people have read all the FECC reports? And Henry, you can't answer that question. I guarantee you that in most audiences, the answer is very few. Where did you get your position? Well, the pastor down the street says that this isn't real, so I trust him. Listen to any show on Rush Limbaugh. He'll say it's a joke. Okay, I'll trust Rush. You go down the list. Who do you trust for information? And you will go the easy route. And that's normal. We all do it. We are what's called boundedly rational. We're not totally rational beings, as much as economists would like to say we do. Although Herbert Simon won a Nobel Prize to say we're boundedly rational. We have a limited capacity to gather information. We have a limited capacity to process it, and we look for shortcuts. So psychologists like to say we're cognitive misers. We don't like to expend cognitive energy unnecessarily. We like to keep things simple. So, for example, I remember vividly the first time I went to an organic food store, and I got to the cereal aisle, and I saw a wall of cereals that I'd never seen before. And what was previously an easy automatic decision, I walk up, I grab my cereals, I walk down the aisle, and I'm on my way, required me to stop and think, and it annoyed me. And we all do this. In fact, Max Weber, a sociologist of the turn of the century, pointed out that we have to do this in the modern world. We live our lives by what he said, activating black boxes. I get up in the morning, I turn on my car. I have no idea how the engine works. It gets me where I need to go. I go to the doctor. The doctor says I need a new hip. He did. I did some looking on what's involved in hip replacements. I stopped looking. I don't want to know. I want to keep that black box closed, and I'm going to trust the doctor. I go to the airport. I don't know how TSA works. I don't know how jet engine works. I don't know how air traffic control works. It gets me where I want to go. If you had to open up every single black box that you encounter during your day, you'd become an emotional cripple. If you couldn't eat that food without knowing where it came from, whether it was sustainable, whether the farmers were paid a fair wage, none of you would be eating right now. And if you couldn't buy the clothes you were wearing until you knew how it was made and fair wages and all that kind of stuff, you'd have a very limited wardrobe. That's how we live our lives. We are cognitive biases. We are found to be rational. Finally, and it's important, our political economy creates inertia for change, and change threatens powerful economic and political interests, and they're at play in this debate. And there are major forces, whether it's the conservative right.
ご注意ください。お待たせいたしました。それでは標高1770メートルの関東駅を後にいたしまして、標高980メートルの単独駅まで上りと同じように走りをされまいります。途中2本の鉄塔を通過いたします。通過の車両を入れますので、お足元ご注意ください。ロープウェイ進行方向を向かいまして、そちら右左側の方が料金所と見落としの車両になります。最大車両36度、平均高度20キロ電車名を下る料金所となっております。ヘルメットを着用されませんと、ヘルメットを着用しました料金所に確定となっております。ロープウェイがただいま通過しておりますバレー っておりますが、ただいま通過しております8、9、10のゲレでロングのため、あまり視界よくございませんので、気をつけて滑走をお願いいたします。それでは、監督の方にございます駐車場、そばに駐車場のそばにありますバスセンター、インフォメーションセンターとも呼ばれております。バスセンター2階はフードコートとなっております。ゴーゴーカレーがただいま営業をしております。6時まで営業をしております。また、2時になりますと、サンドイッチ、プレート屋さんが入ってから営業を行います。6時まで営業をしておりますので、どうぞご利用ください。鉄塔を通過いたします。車両揺れます。ご注意ください。バスセンター1階によりますと、紫スポーツのコーナーがございます。5時までの営業となっております。3号紫1階にはバス停がございます。3時から6時までの営業となっております。どうぞご利用ください。そして、竜王でただ一つの温泉、滝寄湯の三日月の湯は夜の8時まで営業をしております。どうぞご利用くださいませ。これよりゆっくりと監督駅舎の方に入ってまいります。もうしばらくお待ちくださいませ。車両は横揺れをして入ってまいります。お足元ご注意ください。また、立てかけてありますボール付きなど倒れませんようにお願いいたします。ありがとうございました。監督駅舎の方に到着となります。降り口がこちら側、右側となります。右側の扉が前と後ろ2枚同時に開きます。開く扉にご注意ください。またお乗車車両入れております。ご注意しておりくださいませ。はい、では扉開きます。ご乗車ありがとうございました。 到着で